My name is Kendra Lee, and I go to Woodbridge Middle School. And my question is, where did the name Bebop, also known as Rebop, originate?
Well, in the beginning, when Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker and many musicians would try to sing the pieces that they were playing, and if it didn't have any music, they said, well, it sounds like this, bebop, bebop, bebop. And they would use that phrase to indicate the phrasing, the musical phrasing of what they were talking about. So people started calling the music after the language that they were using to sort of sing that sing those melodies. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I'm John Downer. I'm from Woodbridge Middle School.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your name.
John Downer. I'm from Woodbridge Middle School too. My question is, how did New York City, especially 52nd Street, help bebop develop?
Well, 52nd Street, in one block between 5th and 6th Avenue in New York, in downtown New York, just a couple of blocks from Rockefeller Center, in the 40s, these were all brownstone houses, and they had been, during the Prohibition days of the 20s and 30s, they had been illegal nightclubs. And but by the time the 40s rolled around, they were legal nightclubs. And so there were 20 of them, 10 nightclubs on either street, and on either side of the street. And so it was a wonderful gathering place for musicians. So when music like Dizzy Gillespie was experimenting with in Harlem was brought downtown, he brought it to the Onyx Club on 52nd Street.
Hi, I'm Katie Wolnetsky, and I'm a sophomore.
Tell me your name again?
Katie Wolnetsky, and I'm a sophomore at Hilton High School. My question is, what was the reaction of musicians and non-musicians to bebop when the style of playing first came about?
Well, this is what Vincent Herring was referring to a moment ago. One of the reasons he's writing his book is because during the 40s, when bebop first came out, many of the people who wrote about bebop didn't understand it, didn't like it, and so they found musicians who didn't understand it and didn't like it, and they quoted them to say, well, this music is not very good, we don't like it, and so forth. But most of the musicians who were older musicians liked this music because they realized that Dizzy Gillespie, Thelonious Monk, and many of the other younger musicians of that time were following in their footsteps and were just taking what they did a step further. So the musicians who were playing the music and involved in the music thought it was terrific and recognized that it was a new step. But most of the people who wrote about the music didn't understand it, and they wrote the wrong thing. We have a phone call from Virginia Beach.
Hi. As I try to expand my horizons a bit, I find it difficult to enjoy listening to some of the greats, such as John Coltrane and Charlie Bird Parker. It sounds real noisy.
Sounds real noisy.
Yeah, very difficult to follow. I was wondering, do you have to listen to them differently than you listen to some of the other artists?
What do you normally listen to?
Well, certainly smooth jazz was one of my first sort of introductions to jazz, and as I try to expand my interest a bit, an example would be I bought the Village Vanguard recordings of John Coltrane, and really difficult to listen to.
Now, how would you suggest, Vincent, that the caller prepare himself to listen to Coltrane if he's been listening to smooth jazz?
Okay, well, this is kind of a difficult question, and it is such that one of the reasons I believe so strongly in music education is if you have a musical background, it puts you in a position where you can appreciate music to much greater depth. And if you look at how popular sports are, football, baseball, basketball, kids play those sports. They understand how the sport is played. If you come from Europe and you watch American football, you go, I don't get it. But if you grow up playing that sport, you love it and you understand what's happening, and then you appreciate the different athletic achievements that are happening. It's not very different in jazz. It's a very similar kind of thing. If you have a musical background, if you know what it takes to play an instrument, when you see someone or hear someone like a Charlie Parker or John Coltrane play, it hits you in a different way. Unfortunately, I guess you don't have that background, and I've actually compiled a list, a suggested list that people get into, and you should check out a variety of jazz. A lot of people start with like Louis Armstrong. It's a really nice place to start. It's very easy to follow. He's a great singer. He communicates well with people, and then you'll probably, if you like that, then you'll probably progress to different things. Try other styles of jazz, and as you start listening to more simple forms of jazz, maybe your ear will progress and you will get into other things and hear it in a positive way.
We have a phone call from Bayonne, New Jersey. Bayonne, New Jersey.
Hi, Dr. Taylor. This is Mr. Davies from Bayonne. I have two questions from students. The first question is from Jonathan. Why do you enjoy jazz?
Why do I enjoy jazz?
Or any of your players?
Okay. Why do you enjoy jazz, Chimp?
I enjoy jazz because you can incorporate all the things that you learn in music and bring your own personal contribution to jazz. If you want to be funky, you can be funky. If you want to be subtle, you can be subtle. If you want to be lyrical, you can be lyrical. I think jazz is the most opportunity to put in your own personal freedom. Seems like other musics, like classical music, you have to play what the composer wrote. If I'm playing in a pop rhythm section, I have to play the groove only. Seems like in jazz, I can really make much more of a personal contribution as part of the group. And that's why I find it the most exciting music to play.
Okay, and one more question?
Yes.
All right, this is from Sarah. How many hours a day do you practice?
Not enough. How many hours a day do you practice?
Well, when I first started to play, it was as long as I could stay awake, I'd practice. And as you get more involved in my schoolwork and stuff like that, I had to give time to that. And but I always tried to keep my family up as late as possible trying to practice, because playing the drums is really you have to really find your time to do it. But as I got older, and I'm getting older, and I have a child now, he wants to play my drums. Every time I go to play, he plays them. He wants to play them. Give me the sticks, Dad. Or, if I'm practicing on the piano, he wants me to play the drums, and he plays piano. I mean, and he's only 2.5 years old, so I have to find my time. I have to find it, and I have to use that time as creatively as possible to get as much done as possible, and not to play things that I already can play. I try to work on things that I can't play.
Sure.
I'd like to add something to that. Most of the musicians I know, and including myself, when I was growing up, high school age, I would say I put in a minimum of 4 hours a day, most likely 6, and always on the weekend about 8 hours per day. And I find that most of my friends went through a similar period, and there was several years in a row where they put in an average, let's say, about 6 to 8 hours a day. And there's an interview, a tape of Paul Desmond, another great saxophone player, interviewing Charlie Parker. And he asked Charlie Parker that same question. And Parker described his day at a certain point. And at that time in his life, when he was practicing 16 hours a day. Pretty straight.
Well, my answer to many students when I first started playing was, they said, how much do you practice? And the serious answer, I was making fun a moment ago, but the serious answer is sometimes as little as 10 hours a day. Next question. Phone call from Bergen County, New Jersey.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, my name is Bill Murray. I go to Bridgefield High School. I play the trumpet also. I'm a junior. And I'm fond of all the musicians, like Dizzy Gillespie and everything, but I'm wondering also Clifford Brown. I know he's a amazing trumpet player, and I know he's, I guess you would say, a little underestimated in terms of his talent, you know what I mean? Like, he's not as popular as people like Dizzy Gillespie. I know also because he had such a short life, but, I'm wondering how you feel about him and his music.
Well, Clifford Brown, I would have to disagree a little with you. I think among musicians, Clifford Brown is one of the strongest influences. He's certainly as strong an influence as Dizzy Gillespie and other people, despite the fact that he died he was killed tragically in an accident at a very early age. Now, Clifford Brown influenced a whole group of people that came out of Detroit in the 50s and 60s. I mean, a whole school of musicians was influenced by the tremendous way that he approaches melody, harmony, and rhythm. So he's not as well known in the public eye, but with musicians, he's still a big influence. I hear a lot of young trumpet players who try very hard to sound as good as he sounded when he was their age. Other questions? Yes, sir. Right here.
Hi, I'm Nate Miller, a sophomore here at Hilton. How do the members of the quartet use the chords to improvise and play together?
How do you use the chords to improvise on?
Well, that question I could actually take an artist in resident position and explain it in about 1 month. But in a nutshell, there are a variety of melodies going on in my head, and I'm listening to the rhythm that's going on. I'm listening to the bass and the piano for the harmony that they're playing, and also I know the chord structure is what it is, and I'll take a combination of a melody or a scale or a particular riff or something that I hear, and I want a melodic statement that I want to play across the chord, and I do so in a way, long as I maintain logic and resolve those things in a way that sounds correct to my ear, then I feel confident that I can play just about anything through the chords.
We have a phone call from Villanova College.
Yes, sir. I was wondering, who did Charlie Parker listen to develop his personal style of expression?
Charlie Parker listened to any number of people. When he was coming up in Kansas City, there were people like Lester Young who were often playing in Kansas City with Basie Band and other bands. But I met Charlie Parker later when he was with the Earl Hines Band. And at that time, the guys who travel on the bus, the Earl Hines Band travel on a bus from place to place, they complained a lot because Charlie Parker would get scores from the great classical composers and Stravinsky and people like that. And he would look at things in the score and try to figure, well, gee, that's interesting. That's an interesting phrase. And look how he used that and see how that balances against another melody. And he began to listen to things like that, Rites of Spring and things like that. And you could hear that in his work. He also listened to the music that went on before him, people like Sidney Bechet and many other musicians who played in the New Orleans style. He liked that. And he knew some of those tunes. He would sometimes go and jam with them. So he was influenced by a lot of people who went before him and a lot of people who played different styles of music, like European classical music. And he put all of that together and devised his own way of making a musical statement.